what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it.
Okay, so let's talk about this LSU recruiting class, Jake, because I think it is, again, surface level. If you just glance, I understand being frustrated. And hell, look, if you want to be someone who's going to look further into it and be frustrated, that's your right as well. Like that's all good. Go for it. I have just noticed in myself, and again, is this optimism? I don't know, right? I can't always separate. I tend to be a bit of an optimistic person. Times been accused of being a sunshine pumper, so maybe this is some of that. But just naturally, the more I've read about this class, the more I've looked into this class, the more bullish I become, and the more I see the vision. And look, let's also be clear. Like I don't love or hate individual recruits, right? I'm always about no micro. I want macro. I want to see where do you rank. And LSU ends up breaking into the top 10 for the on-3 composite.
Yeah.
247 composite. They're at 11. So it is a top 10 class. I feel very comfortable in saying that. You have 17 4-stars. That's the third most 4-stars in the country. 62% blue chip ratio. That is an elite blue chip ratio. Don't roll your eyes at that. It does matter. It's not the end all be all, but it does matter. Getting enough.
Would Washington break that, by the way, real quick?
I think they would, which would be awesome.
Jeez,
and what's funny is the last team to do it would have been Jameis Winston's Florida State team, and Washington kind of built in a similar fashion. So, potentially. Michigan's basically breaking it as well. Yeah. Michigan's barely breaking 50%. And that's actually what I wanted to use as a foil for this LSU conversation is you want to be like Michigan. Michigan right now, look, they don't even have a good recruiting class right now. I was talking to Joshua Perry about this, though. He's a guy that played for Urban Meyer. He was a captain on that national championship team in 2015. He's an Ohio State guy.
Charger for a season.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Charger for a season. And it's funny because, we don't always know the dynamics at play, like when we talk about how we think about like Mississippi State people or Texas A&M people. But he called Michigan a cult. He was like, look, they just do it differently there. They don't really care about other people's evaluations, and they just want people who are like fully bought in and willing to do their role. Like they really get this odd character where they don't like care about their kind of personal being as much as a team or whatever, right? And I've been thinking about that a lot because that's really what a lot of this class feels like. A ton of Louisiana in this class.
67%.
And touching all corners. 16 guys that stayed here throughout high school, 20 guys that were born here at least, some moved away. And then as Shea pointed out in the press conference yesterday, even like 3 more from East Texas, right? So like a lot of guys that have – it's a class where, to me, Brian Kelly's been telling you since day one he wants to build through freshmen. He don't want to build through the portal. This is a foundational meat and potatoes, sinew and bones. If you look, like you're not going to beat Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama at their game. You're just not going to. You don't have the resources. You don't have the cachet. You're not going to out-recruit them. And so how have you built every national championship team at LSU? It's been with a solid, concrete foundation of Louisiana Cats. And that's exactly what this class is. And it's not that they're not talented. Again, 17 4-stars. Third most in the entire country. Only Oregon and I think Georgia maybe has one more. I think Georgia has 18 and Oregon has 18. So these are talented Cats. And so, yeah, I get the vision. Like, this is how you, and positionally it's broken down well. And so this is how you avoid needing to go out and get big numbers out of the portal, or you're avoiding major roster holes. Yeah. And you have guys that maybe aren't as willing to transfer. I mean, nobody else even took visits. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is as committed of a class as I've ever seen.
Yeah, they had them fully on lock as soon as they commit, and they don't take visits elsewhere, and you get all of them in day number one. Like that never happens. And I know recruiting landscape has changed a little bit, but still, I mean, look what happened to Florida.
Oof.
I mean, they were top 3 all season long, and then they were top 7 all day yesterday, and then they go back into the low teens.
16.
High teens now.
And they would have been screwed had they not. It would have been even worse if they didn't. And they almost lost DJ Lagway as well, the quarterback. So, but yeah, awful day for Billy Napier.
To go back to your point, last year's recruiting class, if you look at how far they were away from LSU in miles, 451.3 miles was the average distance of player in the recruiting class, like how far they were from this campus. This year, this recruiting class, so 451 last year, 191.3 miles this year.
Damn.
So they had a point of emphasis. We are going to get guys that are close to home. We are going to get Louisiana guys, 67% of this class from Louisiana. And even the guys that are not from Louisiana, as you mentioned, they're going to be somebody that they're close to Louisiana. And so they really, I mean, they kind of just drew a circle of a territory that they wanted to hit, and they crushed it. And Frank Wilson, obviously, being the recruiting coordinator, compared to Polian, like you can tell, like this is his path. Like this is his vision as well. And we know what Frank can do in high school recruiting. I mean, you're talking a
Frank
big
knows how to
difference.
find them Louisiana diamonds in the rough too.
I mean, you even go back to 2022's class. It's still like it had a lot of Louisiana flair, but still 231 miles from campus. So, I mean, this is as Louisiana as a class is going to get. And then, like, maybe even in the transfer portal, there's still players out there that are from Louisiana. We talked about Tacky Curtis yesterday.
Yep.
And somebody's from Manning, Louisiana. So, even through the portal, you can bring in players because I do think it matters. Being from Louisiana, having the opportunity to play for LSU, right, there's just a little something there that you can't replicate if you're not from here.
I agree. And I think that in the day and age of fickle relationships, right, where half of Billy Napier's first signing class at Florida has now transferred out of Florida, I think there's something to be said for building a foundation with players that are hungry, fully bought in, and a bit undervalued. And again, top 10 class. Like, let's not go too far with this whole idea of, like, undervalued and low ranked. Like, top 10 class, but a top 10 class built solely from guys that, again, were as committed of a class as I've ever seen. And now, if you want to go get a big-time guy in the future, maybe, like, next year because you have a need out of the portal, you can. And yes, like, most years, you're – and maybe you flip a Dominic McKinley come springtime, right?
Yeah.
The big defensive tackle that's currently committed to Texas A&M, which I think LSU will have a good chance of doing so. This might be a bit unfair to paint at, but I think you're going to understand what I'm getting at. To me, this is almost like, I went the Malik Neighbors, not the Kayshon Booties, or at least where Kayshon Booty ended up feeling like, right? And this feels like a class of Malik Neighbors.
You remember Malik Neighbors' recruitment. I mean, it wasn't early on. He was committed to Mississippi State.
Yeah.
At Acomo, and I know he moved just last year, but I remember sitting there with Verge Osbury, and we were talking recruiting. We were on the field in Tiger Stadium. It was after a game, and they were talking about different players throughout the state, and I'm just listening because like high school football is not something we do a deep dive into, certainly like while they're playing. And I remember them talking about other receivers and this receiver, that receiver, and Verge stopped the whole conversation. He's like, they need to be worried about Malik Neighbors. Because right now nobody's talking to Malik Neighbors from anywhere big, and he's committed to Mississippi State, and he's the best player in the state and the best player in the class. And I'm sitting there like, he said that with his chest out. He must mean, and lo and behold, Malik Neighbors is going to be a top 10 NFL draft choice and was a dog on the football field.
So let's get to Samuel's comments here. Gulf South says, but UGA and Oregon have multiple 5-stars go along with their 4-stars. Actually, no. Oregon has 0 as well in the On3 industry rankings. Oregon's class actually very much like yours. You have 17 4-stars, 10-3. Oregon has 18 4-stars, 7-3. So very similar. Again, yes, Georgia has you're not going to beat Georgia at recruiting. I don't know how else to say it. Kirby Smart's better than anybody else at it. He's got way more resources than you do. They can sell a more consistent and recent championship pedigree. They have a more populous state with a state that's actually even better per capita Like, you're never going to beat Georgia at recruiting. And trying to do so, then you're kind of going to end up star chasing a little bit. And look at what happened to Florida when they just tried to do that, right? It looked good until it didn't, until it completely imploded on signing day. And you know, even though it should be a more even playing field, you're not going to beat Alabama. It's Nick Saban. He's goated for a reason, right? What you need to do is find where do you fit in. And this feels like a class. Now, certainly most years, again, you want to get McKinley, maybe 5-star there. And most years you're going to want at least one or two of the big guys. But this feels like a realistic fit for LSU as Brian Kelly instills his process and tries to create a consistency. And probably a realistic fit in the age of NIL when you're going to have, you know, Texas and Miami. Like, Miami sucks. Mario Cristobal is a 500 coach, and yet he's getting 5 stars because, you know, making a lot of money and living in South Beach as an 18-year-old is probably pretty freaking cool. So, like, yeah, I really like Colin Hurley, which we can talk about as well.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.